113 North Broadway, Hispanic male, red shirt, running southbound along Broadway behind the businesses, operating north.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Doug Nolte, and welcome to this edition of Behind the Badge, your behind-the-scene looks at what's going on with the Wichita Police Department. Well, today I've got a couple of guests with me, and last month we started off with the air section. I've got our tactical flight officers with us, Brad Carver and Tommy Nickel. Guys, thanks for being here with me.
Thanks for having us.
Well, you know, last month when we started our air section footage in episode, we talked a lot about the flying side of it, the helicopter, the history of the unit. But kind of what you two do really is a significant portion of how law enforcement interacts with not only the helicopter but with the ground. That's the tactical flight officer. So, Tommy, tell us a little bit about the tactical flight officer and what your role is up in the air.
Really, we take over as far as the communication. We're kind of the liaison between the pilot, dispatch, and the officers on the ground. We're kind of running that whole communication circuit. We're relaying information to the officers on the ground, what we're seeing when we come into a scene. They're relaying to us as we're coming into a scene what we should be looking for, and we're just sharing information back and forth from the. You know, it's just a great aerial platform that we can relay information back and forth, and that's what brings it all together for us to get it done.
Well, I would think that, you know, we talk in law enforcement, it's a stressful job, but when you guys are flying and you guys are actually on a call, the amount of concentration and things that you have to pay attention to, you're probably checking out 10 or 15 things at once. How do you prioritize and know? I mean, what do you do to train and get ready?
Well, Brad, I'll let you take this one.
A lot of it comes with just experience of being on the street. Prior to being part of the air section, of course, you have to be a police officer, and gaining the experience on the street of how a call should work and how things are supposed to work, and you know, being able to gain the aerial perspective of that and direct from the air is the biggest part of it. With the equipment that we have in the helicopter, with the moving map system and FLIR, it gives us that much of a tactical edge that the officers on the ground just don't have.
Well, you know, that's probably the thing that I think has, as I've flown with you and looked at what you have to do, there's a vast amount of technology that sits in that helicopter. I mean, you guys have to really be doing not only the job of a police officer and thinking as a police officer, not only thinking as kind of the pilot and where the pilot's going to have to be doing, but ultimately you got to think of all this technology. What is the, you talked about moving maps, you talked about FLIR. Can you guys explain some of those terms and what they do for the officers, for you and for the officers on the ground?
The moving map system is a GPS-based real-time system that gives us a location of our helicopter in relation to the call. We can put in an address anywhere in the state of Kansas, and it'll take us directly to that location. That map is slaved to the FLIR system, where we hit a certain button on the controller, and the camera automatically goes to the location, and we can be looking at a scene from 2 to 3 miles away before we ever even get to it, so we can see somebody running before they even know we're coming into the area.
Well, and you know, a lot of kids watch the show, and one of the things that it sounds like a lot of it's kind of like the video games that they're playing. So a lot of hand-eye coordination, a lot of getting used to. Is that right, Tommy?
It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. The technology is great, but it takes time to learn it and to operate it correctly, and it's a great tool.
Well, we talked to Lieutenant Shields about some of the calls that make, but in terms of calls that you guys have made and some of the things that you do up in the air, can you give us a sense of what a shift is like for you guys in terms of what do you do to prepare to go up, and then when you're in there, what are the things that you're looking for?
First thing we do when we come in, of course, is do the pre-flight inspection, because safety of the flight is utmost importance. Without the pre-flight of the helicopter, we can't do our job in any way. After that, we look at our equipment, the infrared system, the GPS systems, make sure all the gyros are working correctly to where the information that we're giving the officers on the ground isn't in error, that we're looking at it on the screen, but it's wrong information. It's not going to help at all that way. Once all of our systems are all checked out to be fine, we go on patrol. And the difference between a beat officer is a beat officer's area responsibility is a small area. It's designed that way to where they can have more interaction with the public that they serve. Our area of responsibility is the entire county. We handle stuff with the Sheriff's Department, State Patrol, Wichita Police Department, every outlying city anywhere in the county, and sometimes outside that county. So our area of responsibility is a lot larger. So from the time that we take off to the time that we land is spent on a call, whether it be helping Keachai Police Department with a burglary in progress or a car stop, or all the way down in northern parts of Mulvane to be able to do things like that.
And our radio is constantly scanning the channels, so we're hearing various calls that are coming out on various channels all through the county, different cities, different bureaus here in Wichita and KHP. We hear all those calls. So when we hear something that pops up we think is significant, we should probably lend a hand on, we'll lock on that and head that way.
Well, and I'll put you on both on the spot. Can you talk about some interesting calls that you've made where you kind of felt like you contributed to the maybe catching someone or finding someone? Tommy, you have any?
I don't have as many as he does. I haven't been here as long, but I mean, I've been involved in a few chases, motorcycle chase. We were very instrumental in catching him.
We were talking about that it was one of those situations where you guys were there and literally relaying the information right there. Tell us a little bit about that call.
As we came into the area, it was over in the area of Lincoln and George Washington Boulevard. It was a motorcycle chase that had been started by a county officer down in South Wichita. We were literally trying to get out to the bird as we just got done refueling, and we were heading that way. We're probably a mile away and can see the motorcycle on the street eluding the officers, and we call it in and we're coming into the area and we get on top of it. And we were instrumental at that point because they were backing off because of his speeds and the way he had been conducting himself on the street and had already thrown a gun. So we were right on top of him. He tries to ditch them, goes between some houses, wrecks out, and then takes off running on foot. He has no idea we're right on top of him. He's looking for the officers. He's stripping off clothes. We're calling these things in as they're happening and direct him right to the house that he runs into the basement on. They catch him. He has no idea how they were on him.
And you know, I think that underscores the fact that you guys see things that officers on the street just simply can't see. Brad, what about you? Do you got any stories that stick out to you, or case or calls that you made?
One that sticks out that wouldn't have been caught without the air section is there was a highway patrol chase where the guy stopped at about I-135 and 9th Street and jumped out of the car, turned into a foot chase. They lost him in the area. We were out west helping with a lost child, got done with that call, came in. They asked us to do an infrared scan of the area to see if we could find him. I start scanning the area, and the vehicle had stopped in the grassy area right on the on-ramps. And approximately 20-25 yards to the east of it, there's a tree, and I could see something under the tree that, you know, with the infrared camera that just didn't look right. As we came around on the east side of the orbit, you could see a person squatted underneath the tree, hiding from the officers 20 yards from them. The brush and the leaves, and he was hidden up inside the tree. You couldn't see him with the naked eye. We directed the officers to him. He was taken into custody 30 minutes after they had lost him in the area. Well,
I'll tell you, we've got a little bit of time, and I know that the viewers would probably like to hear a few more stories. Talk about a couple other cases that you used the FLIR and walk us through what happened.
There's one car chase. It was taken from a domestic violence where a vehicle was stolen. We began chasing the vehicle about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. It lasted about 30 minutes. The car had been spiked using spike strips several times. You can see in the infrared camera where there's pieces of tire flying off. You can actually see a tire dismount from the rim and roll next to the car and then go off the road. There's been instances where we've seen people throw weapons out of a car, just the temperature difference of something coming out. I've seen them flick cigarettes out of cars. It's very accurate, very, very sensitive equipment, and it works very, very well for those kind of instances.
That's awesome, and I think that a lot of times folks don't realize just how important having a vantage point from up in the sky is so helpful to officers on the street. Well, you know, you alluded to lost juveniles. I'm sure you make a lot of very different calls, and so when you guys are up there, what are you looking for in terms of, or hearing that you focus in on? Are there certain things that you always try to do or make calls you try to make?
There's, of course, our bread and butter is car chases, foot chases, looking for people. But every call that an officer needs something checked, whether it's an audible alarm, a roof, any place where more officers would be helpful, we can take the place of 34 ground officers in a search as an aerial platform. So that just our abilities from the air is a force multiplier for the officers on the ground. Lost juveniles is a huge thing for us, because of course, you know, most of us are parents on the police department, and thought of a lost child, I'd want the helicopter there if it was my child.
Absolutely. Well, I know that, and in this, there's got to be some kind of training that you guys do to familiarize. But what sort of specialized things do you do to prepare for this besides just training on the job? Certainly, you guys are involved in specialized training.
There's an organization that we're members of. It's called Airborne Law Enforcement Association, and throughout the year they have training seminars that go on where other officers from other cities put training on. I've had the opportunity to go to a couple of them. I went to San Antonio, Texas here about a year and a half ago. Was part of a class given by Kevin Means, who was part of the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. He's the premier tactical flight officer in the country. He's written several books. He is the go-to guy for anything having to do with infrared or tactical flight officer. His insight has helped a lot for me to come back and able to teach everybody here, whether it's the pilots or the other tactical flight officers, what he has taught me.
Well, and Tommy, you know, just looking at what's going on in there, seems to me that you guys have to be there. The pilot has to fly the helicopter, but you guys have to be there to do it.
We're that extra set of eyes, basically. A lot of times the pilot is also helpful on calls when we're doing an orbit. He'll also have a chance to have eyes out there, but really his main job is to safely maneuver the helicopter, put us where we can see what we need to see so we can relay that information. It's really just a constant battle up there as far as you're trying to keep track of where you're at as you're orbiting, what direction you're facing, what direction the person's running, getting those things, you know, the great information as far as, you know, descriptions and things like that. And you're trying to keep all that straight and relay information.
Well, when we talk about technology on the helicopter, I know for some of us that have been around, we remember when the only thing that was on a helicopter was a big spotlight. Do you guys have a spotlight on this copter?
Yes, we still have the spotlight. With that spotlight, though, it's slaved to the infrared camera, to wherever the camera's looking, the spotlight's going there as well.
So everything is kind of connected up inside. That's pretty awesome. How bright is it?
15 million candle power.
Okay, so you don't want to put your hand in front of it when it's turned on. Is that?
Get tan.
It's very hot.
Get your tan. Well, in terms of equipment on the helicopter, and we talked about some of the stuff prior to having moving maps. How did you guys have to figure out where you were?
Basically, if we didn't know the street, we had a big map that we would pull out and try to find where we were going. And trying to call out locations to officers that we're not familiar with, we would be calling out 3 streets west of Mays or something like that. We wouldn't be able to give a street address to the officers on the ground. Now with the moving map system, it gives us pinpoint accuracy on the house that we're looking at.
So the technology, while I'm sure is expensive, it sure is saving a lot more time, but it's sure making things a lot safer is what it sounds like.
It's cutting a lot of time off as far as getting the specific information to an officer on the ground that needs it now, versus give me a minute, I'll figure out where you're at and where I'm at. This is immediate, and he may need that information right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate you guys being here and talking to us about the airborne technology. You guys do a great job. I know from the police department's point of view, you make our job a lot safer and a lot easier when you guys help us out. And I'm glad that the citizens can kind of take a look behind the scenes too, because I think it's an important function for the city as well as for Sedgwick County. We'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and watching us, and join us next time on Behind the Badge, your behind the scenes look at the Wichita Police Department.